All right, well then what I'm going to do is introduce our presenter, and you probably already know that what we're going to hear about tonight is converting to Honda charged power. And there's quite a few members in the club that have done this, but Alec is very well thumbs up to those of you that have done it. Or you could be like us and we just buy one where the hard work is already done. But there's definitely a big boost in power output, especially when you're converting over from the Series 1 engine. But it's not. I know that some Series 2 Elises also have been upgraded to Honda. So Alec, though, has gone to a bit of trouble to document this process. So I'm going to pass over to him in a minute. Now, for those of you that don't know Alec Spyrou, he actually came to Australia about 20 years ago and pretty much joined the club at that time. I think that's about when he bought his Elise, and has been a member with the club ever since, and quite an active member. He's even spent a couple of years on the committee, has been very active in motorsport and very competitive. Now that probably, he's pretty enthusiastic about racing, so I'll let him explain that a bit more. He was even part of a racing team back in the UK, so I can understand why he wanted to go a bit faster. He was very much involved with the MSCA for motorsport, helping with that. He was even a driver instructor for the Come and Try MSCA events. So I'm going to put you all on mute, but I'm going to hand over to Alec, who's got a presentation for us. Are you there, Alec?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep, sure can.
Okay. Thanks for the opportunity to present, Vicky. It's been a while since I've been involved with the LCV and the MSCA. I actually sat on the committee for the MSCA as well when we transformed and helped grow the sport. There was a period of time when the MSCA was struggling to get tracks and sufficient members, but it's all gangbusters now, which is a great testament to everyone who put effort in off their own back to do that. But anyway, look, just a quick introduction. And as Vicky said, I've been involved in motorsport pretty much like I suspect many of you from your early days. I think I started in go-karting and just went from there, right? And still go-karting today. I love it. I think it's a really raw form of racing. As you can tell, I'm from the UK. I came over in 2001. The deal coming over with my wife in 2001 was to make sure that if she got the deal coming over to Australia to live, that I'd get something out of it as well. So I finagled a guaranteed Lotus Elise, and she didn't know what she let herself into once I got it. But it was fun. Yeah, and I've been all over Australia in my little Elise. We've been to Tassie as well. We've been on big group days with lots of the LCV community. And I've had a really good time with the car. So what I just wanted to very briefly show you was, I'll do a screen share. Let's see if this works. Vicky, you're going to have to enable the screen share, please, because I can't do that. So if you can let me know when that's done. There we go. Okay. Right. So there's we've been to lots of track days. One of the track days that I absolutely recommend if you haven't already been to it is what we call the Lotus Only track days. And these events, as you can see, this one was at Winton, are an absolute blast. For those that don't know, SSC arranged Lotus Only track days in different parts of Australia every year. And if you go to one event, go to this. It's an absolute barnstormer of an event. They put on different types of track events for you. So from those who are just keen to go around and enjoy themselves to the full-fledged racing fraternity and anything in between. So I'd strongly recommend going to one of those. I've also taken my car in to bits many times in the garage or in the carport at home, as you can see. I like tinkering around and doing bits, and I've had lots of friends help me do that. And like I said, you get to go to many places with your car and your friends. I found this picture particularly surprising. I didn't realize how small the car looks. I mean, it's a bit of an optical illusion. That was a very big bloke, but he fitted in the car, trust me. He's just on a slope in the foreground as the car's in the background. But I think it speaks a lot to how small our cars are. And obviously I'm talking about the Elise S1. I know things have moved on since then. This was a Beechworth or bust rally, as we call it. So, you know, lots of friends, lots of good times, lots of different types of Elises and Lotus cars. I've been away from the MSCA and the LCV for about 5 years, just out of the way things have happened in life. You know, things get in the way, family, etc., etc. And what I wanted to, there's some questions anyway. Alex, the only person I've been with go-karting who was so enthusiastic he cracked his ribs. Yes, that's actually true. We took a bend very, very hard and somehow my ribs cracked. I'm not a big bloke, so I'm probably rather frail, but thanks. What was I going to say? Yes. One thing I wanted to do was just very quickly show you a video and then get into the presentation. This is a video that my son knocked up. He's at RMIT doing his Bachelor in Media and Arts. And he thought, well, for the first video, let's see how we can get to see what my dad's car's like, because he likes the car like I do. So just a 30-second video. Hopefully the audio comes through as well. So I'll just go full screen. And I think that's the key difference for the Lotus fraternity. I think there's a lot of people in the fraternity who like fast cars, but there's a big difference between fast and good handling cars. It's the nearest thing to go-karts I've driven in, apart from Caterhams when we raced in the UK. They really are very raw, but I probably don't need to tell anyone here that. But every time I get in the car, I enjoy it so much. And I'm looking forward to getting back into it, because like I said, I've been away for 5 years. So I've been tinkering around, getting the car back to race ready, and hopefully I'll be out there with the rest of you soon, and to meet lots of new faces, as I've seen on the bulletin board and on the new app. But that's to come. Anyway, I'll get into it. Forgive me, I won't be able to see your comments as I go through this presentation, because I'm in full screen mode now. But I'll try and go through it relatively quickly, and then you can ask questions, and we can always pop back to it if there's a particular question. So after racing around in my Lotus for about 5 or 6 years, there are quite a few people beginning to look at converting the car to a Honda engine. And at the time when we looked at it, it was really just emerging back in 2005, I would say. 2006, and it wasn't really something that was done all the time, but it was something that was being looked at by an increasing number of people in the UK originally, and then it started to come over here. And there was a gentleman called Simon Scuffman who helped make it together for some of the organisations in the UK. He's well known over there, and he came over here and helped some of the Sydney boys do it and get the car up to spec, so it would pass Australian standards. And from that point onwards, people just started to adopt them. They started appearing on the track. And, you know, the real reason for going for a Rover was the fact that I was no longer competitive. And I needed that extra help, because you had cars out there, not only with the Honda engine naturally aspirated, but you actually had quite a few out there who went whole hog and went supercharged. Right? And when you go supercharged, you really do increase the power. So a supercharged Honda can, as you can see up here, can attract upwards of 295 brake horsepower. A standard Honda, normally aspirated without any special cams or anything, around the 195 to 220. And there were other people who had, you know, I was looking at, well, do I convert to a Honda or do I convert to a Toyota in some of the S2s that have got them? Some of them were supercharged, some of them were naturally aspirated. And if you look at the difference in power between the Honda, which was 220 brake horsepower with 118 brake horsepower on the Rover, and those are raw numbers. You've got to take into account the extra weight of the engine, which surprisingly isn't that heavy. Then it really was rather compelling for me. So I'm a bit of an analytics guy. I work in IT, so I spent ages crunching the numbers, looking at 15 million options, but usually your gut feeling of going for it is the right feeling, and that's what I did. I went for it, and I did a lot of it with my mechanic. I'm hands-on in nature, so I got to learn the ins and outs of what was there, what was under the hood. And as you can see, when we took out the old Rover, it was rather a messy affair. The Rover engine, whilst it's quite unique in its setup and quite tall, there was a lot of mess. There was a lot of things you had to consider. But the interesting thing was when we took it out, the difference with what you had to play with made for me very clear that this was a very doable thing. Now there's a lot to consider, and I wasn't treading new ground by any stretch of the imagination by the time I did this, because we had at least 10, 15 cars that had converted, probably 6 or 7 of them already converted in Melbourne. And there's a lot of things to consider. So I've got a monster spreadsheet that I went through on every single thing I had to change, all the commentary, where I got them from, how much they cost, etc. Now, every conversion is slightly different, and I suppose it's predicated on the fact it depends upon which conversion kit you get, because that has differences in how the engine sits, for example, which then has an effect on the geometry of the wheel setup and the bearings and the rear axle, etc., etc., etc. And there was one variance that I also considered at the time. They call it the Frankenstein engine, which is a Honda engine, is traditionally the K20 DC5 series. But a lot of the Honda mod community have actually taken a Honda K24 bottom end with a Honda K20 top end, so you get lower down torque earlier, and that was quite a compelling change. But for me at the time, very few people had done it, and I wasn't that adventurous to tread that brand new ground, so I just went for a standard stock Honda K20. The first thing to get hold of, though, was the engine, and that was really quite a struggle because they're as rare as can be in Melbourne, in fact in Australia. Now there was the group that I mentioned that were now doing conversions in Sydney, the Mackie brothers, if you know them. But I wanted to do it myself, and I didn't really have the money to spend as much as they had, and it wasn't that much cheaper in the end of the day, but I knew that I was already stretching my budget. So I went up to eBay, as recommended by a few friends, and found 5 or 6 sellers that had these things stacked up to the ceiling. And I'm talking 15, 20-foot ceilings, not your standard, in warehouses. Tons of these that were converted to store these engines for on sale. And this was a JDM spec, which is the higher race spec engine that comes out of the Honda Integra Type R, as we call it in the UK. When I found the right seller on eBay, I contacted them, and they were excellent. I can't recommend them highly enough. They're based in Canada, but they'll do a pressure test. They'll show you all the serial numbers, and they'll show you the pressure test on video against the serial numbers. They'll show you the internals and the gearbox setup, and they'll spend no end amount of time making you confident that what you're picking up is not a dud. But you never know until it turns up. There could be something wrong, there could be a miscommunication, right? You don't get any of that when it's local. You can go up and see the thing, etc. But this was my only route to get it done in a realistic time, rather than hang around waiting for a wrecker to say that they had one available. The great thing about the Honda is there's tons of parts for them about. There's a mod community, and even though the engines now aren't being made any longer, they're still based on such a large base of purchases that you wouldn't struggle for parts for these for a long time. And the other thing about these things are they are pretty much bulletproof. They're Honda engineering. There are some complexities though, and probably the biggest complexity for us was making sure that the CV boots that were attached to the outer and inner CV joints were the right type, and that we had the right drive shafts. Again, you can go to an organization that provides you the drive shafts. They'll even online, they'll ask you how long the drive shafts have to be, what dimensions you need, and they make them specially for these sorts of conversions. And they provide them with the right CV boots. My recommendation is go get them. It takes a lot of hassle out of your conversion, and also buy a couple of extra CV boots. And the reason why you need to buy the extra CV boots, let me just jump ahead, is this. Things are incredibly tight lower down. Higher up in the engine bay, they're fine. But as you can see in this picture, that's the drive shaft with the exhaust right next to it. And it's not much better with the CV boots. They're very close to the bodywork. In fact, we had to bend a little bit of the non-essential bodywork out of the way, because what happens with the CV boots is as they rotate, they actually expand. So they need room around them. And if they don't have room around them and they foul or they get too hot, then what happens is they split and you end up with CV grease all over the place. And obviously you damage your CV joints. So get the proper grease. It's reasonably expensive, but it lasts forever and it's well worth it. And get the right CV boots. And the reason I've got two there is they look identical. They've even got the right part numbers, but they are actually subtly different. We did some funny things as well with mine. In the ridges that you can see, we put a cable tie around the third ridge very lightly, just so that to stop it from ballooning out, because as you rotate very high speed, those things typically pick up momentum, and heat increasing on the inside causes the air to expand, and they can expand themselves. So we also did things like a little breather pipe in between that Jubilee clip you can see, where you can put a little like a WD-40 straw strip, and that lets the hot air out as well. So there's all sorts of tricks and pieces, and it's the little things that catch you out, right? But there are kits for these things. It makes it easy for you. You wouldn't want to be going and making these things yourself. And those drive shafts are absolute top quality, and they got the proper Honda CV joints as well, which I strongly recommend. Anybody tells you to skip on the CV joints, look the other way. So space is one of the important things. And the key thing about space, if you've got an Elise, is whether you go an under exhaust, i.e. under the subframe, or over the subframe. And I went, as you can see here, I went under the subframe. So that's the subframe. And the reason I wanted to do it was I wasn't any longer a hardcore racer. It was more sprint sessions. And I wanted to keep the boot so that I could drive it around town, which I still do today. But the problem with it going underneath is that the heat has less of airflow to escape, right? If you lose the boot and effectively go over the frame, you've got lots of space for airflow, right? So we did a lot of inventive things, like when we put the under tray on, I put an air scoop so that the air would rush in through and be pointed up towards the exhaust, and it makes a big difference. So heat is a very important thing from the exhaust system. But the other thing that's important in terms of heat is the engine itself, right? It gets quite warm because you're driving it quite hard, and especially if you go to a hot day, say in Winton, right? So there was a couple of things we did. Firstly, we put an oil cooler in. We started with an air cooler. Don't do it. It doesn't hack it, in my experience. So on the back shelf against the firewall, get yourself a Mocal oil cooler. Really does the job. Excellent job to cool down the oil, which obviously then helps the engine temperatures. One of the other things you've got to understand is you're cornering at a lot faster pace now. So things like fuel surge and oil surge will happen. And even in the Rovers, we've known that you can get oil surge. So this is a baffled sump that you can just fit into the standard Honda engine. And you can get these again off the shelf from the Honda community. And these have got gates that open, which you can't quite see here, but there and there. The gates got gates to allow the oil to move around. Very good investment. Standard oil pan, recommend it. The other thing, and that's because I got burnt when I was running the Rover. It got too hot even in the Rover. I put in some oil and water gauges with alarms set at certain limits. Having said that, after having done all this and put those in, I've not really ever looked at those dials, and they've never alarmed me. But it's nice to know that, you know, if there's ever anything that goes wrong, ever anything gets blocked or anything is going wrong, you've got something to measure unusual behavior against, and you can take corrective action. So I'd strongly recommend that you take those precautions, because heat is a really important problem. So as I said, we put heat shields everywhere. This drive shaft was eventually protected with extra heating. This bearing, the drive bearing here, actually had an extra heat shield go over the top of it as well. And as I said, we've got heat scoops, air scoops. So as the car drives, the under tray has actually got like a NACA duct in it. And the NACA duct on top of that has actually a manufactured scoop out of aluminium that points directly to where we want that air to go. And maybe it doesn't make a lot of difference, but it gave me peace of mind that I'd done everything I could. Like I said, oil surge and fuel surge is important. So you're drinking fuel at a lot faster pace than you would do with a Rover. So until I spend some money on an integrated larger fuel tank with a surge capability, we've done what a lot of other people have done, which is an external fuel tank, just as a surge, an extra couple of liters. And it's really important to also upgrade your fuel pump, because the Rover one won't cut the hassle that you need to go through with the Honda. And luckily, again, there's one that's uprated that's available on Elise Parts, which I'm sure you're aware of, or Elise Shop, and there's a few other places. So my recommendation would be make a shopping list of things you'd need. Talk to somebody who's done it. I got my spreadsheet. I started creating it and getting information from everyone else. The K20a ECU needs to be obviously changed from the Rover. And then there's a wiring loom attachment that allows you to attach it straight to the dashboard, the standard dashboard. And the wiring loom adapter is, you know, not a lot of money, and it's well worth the investment. And it also sorts things out like the speed limiter. It also sorts out the speedo and the readings that you get. So it's really useful. And it's quite a neat setup, as I said. I was surprised how neat it was. In fact, I've often said the Rover engine probably had a time in the Elise, but the Honda was probably the spiritual successor for it. It would have been, in my view, a really nice engine to have put in if Lotus had decided to. You don't lose a lot of the tractability down low. You certainly get a wonderful screen when that second cam kicks in, when that second cam profile kicks in. And it's a wonderful screen. A lot of people have gone for the supercharged screen, but it's nothing like the engine screen you get when this thing kicks over to its second cam. And one of the things I had to get used to when driving was shifting later, much later. You know, I used to shift at, I think the Rover sweet spot was around 5,500, 6,500. This thing was going past 7,500 up to 8,000. And I was, you know, in my in-car videos early on, people were asking me why I was shifting so early, because I was just, you're used to where you shift. And it's incredible when you go down the straight track and you can see this thing go, go, go. And then you get this surge in your back when the second cam profile kicks in. So for those of you that don't know, it's almost like the hand of God just pushing you along. It's an extra boost of power. And my main concern, I suppose, about the, and these are pictures of showing you how it looks finished. And like I said, it actually looked neater than the Rover. My one concern was the tractability, because you could steer the car on the throttle. You could literally get it to turn corners on the throttle. That's how responsive the Rover was, because it was a very short stroke, very tall engine, which allowed you to really steer on the throttle. I really didn't miss it once I got the Rover taken out and put the Honda in. I can still steer it because of the weight of the car that allows you to do that. So I find myself gaining extra steering through pushing the pedal, just like I did with the Rover. Now, I won't say it's not different. It is different. It is very different. But it wasn't all the negatives that I thought it would be, because I really loved the Rover engine. But I tell you what, I probably delayed 2 years in doing this, and it was 2 years I should have done it earlier. It really is that good. Like I said, there's a lot of gotchas you've got to understand: heat, fuel, and cooling, and the space under the subframe. Just be very careful. Like I said, that a lot of that space problem goes away if you go over the frame, but I wanted to keep the boot. Some key learnings, I suppose. I think it was great bang for buck. Now, there are kits out there. Costs obviously is a big concern for a lot of people, including myself. I was surprised that the running costs weren't that much higher. I think one of the reasons why I didn't go for supercharge is as soon as you go supercharged, then the costs do go up, because parts where, I mean, you're talking about 330 odd brake horsepower, right? That really, now you're talking about, you know, I remember somebody doing the math of the weight to car ratio, and it's up there with a Pagani Zonda in terms of brake horsepower per ton. Right, if you're talking about 340, 350 brake horsepower in a car that's less than 800 kilograms, you can do the math. So that was one of the main reasons I didn't go supercharged. I'm sure I would have loved it. I'm sure those who've got it do, but I don't think I could have afforded it. The profile of the engine, like I said, it's lower down, so it can actually sit lower, and that was one of my concerns, whether it was a heavier engine. It's heavier by about 15k, give or take, right, which is about 2% or half a tank of fuel. So if you have a heavy meal, you're probably not much off of that 15k. So for me, the fact that it sat lower, even though it's heavier, it still stayed responsive in terms of tractability and responsiveness. And there are tons of kits out there. So there's a couple of locations that I've listed here. I'll share this with Vicky, but I can show you the links. But in fact, I think I've got them open at the moment. Let's have a look. Yeah, I think I've got them. No, don't have them open anymore. Sorry, so I'll go back to this. But they're available in the UK. You can just buy them and get them shipped over, and then your mechanic can basically just follow the manual and install them, or you can install them yourselves. I don't think the Mackie brothers are doing them anymore in Sydney. But like I said, there's enough people who have done them now to be able to ping the community and ask them. And from my perspective, finding parts for the Honda was the other reason I did the conversion. At the time I was looking, Rovers were getting very long in the tooth, very hard to find parts for them. And you're always worrying about, you know, I'd actually increased the power of my Rover with some cams, etc., and some mods, obviously through the time, like we all do. But I got to the point where I didn't want to push it any further because, you know, the Rover's got a bit of a
You still there, Alec?
Vicky, it looks like Alec's on mute.
I don't know how that happened. I don't think his video is working either. I just thought maybe it could have been a bit of buffering.
That's embarrassing.
We've lost him. Where's he gone? Are you there, Alec?
I'll just call him on my phone.
I just gave him a text, but Rover fragility. Thanks, Frank. He's past the Rover now. Yeah, so I don't know why his video or his audio is working. It could well be just a technical glitch. We'll give him a minute. Has
maybe he didn't pay for his internet. He's run out of it.
What we might do is open up for some questions, or at least start a bit of a discussion about this. Well, just while we wait for Alec to come back. I'm not sure that I'll be able. Can you mute if you're going to be on the phone, please, Eddie? That'll help. Thank you. So if you guys want to just maybe unmute and ask a few questions or give us a few comments about what you think so far on what has been presented. Any comments, anyone?
He's pretty much right that heat's a pain in the ass.
Yes, we've had that experience as well, Hayden. So what about, what's your experience? Did you do your own conversion or did you?
No, mine's a supercharged 2ZZ.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But I've just got high intake temps that are difficult to manage.
I think it's the curse of the Lotus anyway. We've had some
Hi, guys.
issues even with the Rover. Ah, you're back, Alec.
So where did I lose you? Because my internet connection went blip.
Is that what happened? Yeah, we lost firstly sound and then we lost video and I don't know.
So which slide were we? Let me just share the screen and just understand quickly. And I know we're running short on time now, so I don't want to spend forever in a day, but I did want to give you the opportunity to see what we had. So where did we stop? So does anyone know?
What's the next one after that slide?
Okay, then we had this one.
Yeah, we've had that one. And we've
Then we
talked
had this one.
about, yep, we've had that one. We've talked
Then
about
we
the
had-
surge tanks.
And then we talked about how neat it was when it went in and a couple of the lessons learned. Did you get to that?
I think we've been through most of that. Does anyone?
Next one, we're on the big list.
Yeah, I think that's right. You were talking about kits, actually.
Okay. Let me very quickly do that then. I'm sorry about that. The internet link decided to go for a rest. All right, so very quickly. So very quickly, there are kits out there. I don't think anybody in Sydney builds them anymore. But like I said, there's that many out there that have done it. As long as you've got some mechanical capabilities or you've got a mechanic who can do it for you, it's effectively just follow the instruction manual that everyone would have put together. I put my own Excel spreadsheet together with absolutely everything on it. And like I said, it's a really good conversion. There's a couple of links there that I'll share with all of you. I'll send this presentation to Vicky and then she can share links, etc. You do save a lot of parts that get kept. So same wheels, same hubs, brakes are retained, but you might want to upgrade the brakes if you're going on a racetrack. So you might want bigger, stronger pads at the back. But the handling has improved actually, and I didn't think that was one of the things that held me back. I was surprised at how the handling improved because it sits quite a decent amount lower. The extra weight really doesn't make much difference to the handling, and you don't notice it with the extra tractability and the power. And as I mentioned, the running costs surprised me. The reason why I didn't go with the supercharge was I knew that the running costs would go through the roof at that point, right? Because you really are pushing 300 plus brake horsepower, and all the wear and tear then starts becoming, astronomical. Plus, all the extra bits that are needed for the supercharger. And my view is that the NA Honda can be upgraded with extra cams. The Honda community out there is so large. Lee Gardner, if you know him, he's done, when he did his conversion, he did some cams at the same time as well. So it's probably pushing out an extra 15 to 20 brake horsepower more than the standard Honda conversion. It is easier to maintain because the market out there is so rife with Honda mods. And the converse thing was the Rover engine was getting very long in the tooth by the time I'd got it and was thinking of the conversion. And that really drove me to do the change because the market for Honda parts is huge. I've got a Honda shop up the road that still does K20 parts. And it is, I've been driving it for 5 or 6 years hard on the racetrack and it hasn't missed a beat. So it really did go well. And look, just to finish off very quickly, this is what my little Rover engine Elise looked like in the early days. And trust me, I made some changes like the canvas roof, because when you go down the Strait of Phillip Island, if any air gets inside the cabin, you start getting that roof starting to balloon up and you start wondering whether it's going to stay on. So this is what it looks like today. So front splitter, lowered, bigger air intakes on the side, bigger radiator. most of which had been done before I'd actually put the Honda in. And then only recently I put a wing on the back, and I'll be color coding that because I want it to, I don't want it to stand out too much, like tons of adverts all over it and race car bits. I still drive it around town. And I'm really proud of it, and I'm really, really happy with it. And I'm really looking forward to dusting the cobwebs off and coming back to the track days, because I know everyone else's, their times, I've looked at them, their times have massively improved over the 5 years, as you'd expect. And there's more powerful machinery out there. So maybe I'll feel a bit like a rover in amongst the Hondas again. But I'm looking forward to getting back out there and enjoying myself. And on that, I'll call a halt and see if we've got any questions.